Welcome to the Backpack Show, everyone. Chris Brogan is away on business, so sadly he won't be joining us today, but I don't even mind because I have Marissa Nance, founder and CEO of Native Tongue Communications with me. She is a decades-long expert in marketing and advertising, multicultural marketer, and for the last 10 years or so, working in diversity and equity and inclusion. We're going to talk about all those things, as well as her early aspirations of being a screenwriter. We're going to talk about networking, mentoring, all kinds of things that you'll find incredibly valuable. So stick around because we're about to have a lot of fun.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
So welcome. Thanks so much for joining, Marissa.
Thank you for having any show called The Backpack Show. I have to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you. So
I'll come back over and over again. That's just masterful branding. I completely get and understand what you do like that.
That's entirely Chris. So I came along to help originally on the back end of the show. And the very first day I showed up in my jammies with no lipstick on, he went ahead and pulled me out front to co-host. So now you're fully caught up. I've been doing it for a year and a half about. So yes. But first, so before we talk about all your accomplishments in marketing, and there are many, you were key to getting FedEx featured in the Castaway movie, which I think is amazing. Before we get there, let's go wait in the Wayback Machine. You were going to be a screenwriter.
I was.
What changed?
When I was in school at Howard HU University, I wanted to be a screenwriter and I wanted to move out west and write films. And I was going to be part of a scholarship, a mentorship, a fellowship. And a few weeks before I was scheduled to come out and they were going to launch that session, it turned out they had to shut it down for some unfortunate and unsavory reasons that included mentors taking mentees' ideas. And I was kind of faced with, wow, all right, what am I going to do instead? And my father, God rest his soul, spent many years at State Farm in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from. And he said, well, you know what? I think this is great news because you could just move home to Cleveland and work with me. So this is a sign. And I went, this is a sign that I need to find a bus ticket somewhere. And I did. I caught the Peter Pan bus to New York City. And my father said, okay, you want to go to New York? I will give you enough money to survive for a month. But
a month? A month isn't long, Marissa.
At the end of that month, you have to have a job, a place to live, and I have to feel comfortable with you being there. And I have to put into context, my father was 6'6" and a former professional football player. So he was a very imposing and specific kind of guy. And so I moved to New York on the Peter Pan bus from Howard University. And I started going on interviews. And I went on an interview with a woman who was at ABC. And she was lovely. I wish I could remember her name. I have to have Judy. And that afternoon, she went to lunch with a woman named Judy Magnus. And Judy Magnus Nealong is what her name was then. And she was telling Judy about me. And she said, this young woman reminds me of you. And I tell people all the time, I went through 30 years in advertising. And most times I felt like the only chip in the cookie, right? There weren't a lot of people that looked and sounded like me. Well, Judy did. And she said, wait a minute, a young woman from Howard, a woman of color, you can't hire her. I have to hire her at BBDO in advertising. And she got my number and she called the phone, which was on the wall. And I picked up the phone from the wall because it was attached to the wall.
Everybody, kids, ask your parents. That's how it used to be.
It was not a cell phone. I happened to be home. Like there are
That's so lucky, actually.
Right? There are expressions that are obsolete, and one of them is, "Oh, I happened to be home to catch the call," and I did. I happened to be home, and she said, "You don't know me, but I had a conversation about you. I'd like for you to come in and interview for a job at BBDO. We're an advertising agency." And I thought, it's not what I want to do. And as fate would have it, the Phil Duesenberry, the CEO, a very storied and iconic name in advertising, was the CEO of BBDO, and he wrote The Natural with Robert Redford.
Right. Okay.
And I thought, wait a minute. Now, if this guy can do what he's done and run an advertising agency. Maybe I can work in advertising and achieve my dreams of content creation as well. And that's really how I got here. That's how it all began.
So it's almost entirely then, I'm like boiling it down at its most basic form to networking, where somebody was like, you know who you have to meet? Marissa Nance.
That's exactly it. And shady networking, like side-eye shady
Shady.
networking, because she was going to offer me a job. And Judy was like, oh, no. Give me that number.
She
Give
scooped
me
you
that.
up.
And she stole it me away.
So looking at mentoring and its importance and networking and everything in general, how do you find the right mentors when, like you pointed out, you're the chip in the cookie, the only one? How are you going to find the right mentors like in your industry? Do you look outside your industry? Do you look outside your organization? Do you make a combination, of people in and out? How does it work?
I talk about being a chip in the cookie, but I also remind people that some of my greatest and best mentors were frankly cis, non-Hispanic white men, older than me, Connecticut raised. I was raised in Cleveland. I went to Howard. They are very East Coast, and yet they saw something in me, and we had a connection. And many of these men and women, again, who look nothing like me, sound nothing like me, do not share my experience, saw something in me. And so what I would say is really networking becomes a core connection. It's that core connectivity. So externally, on the outside, you would think, how could you mentor? How could you be a mentee? You have nothing in common. But when you look at the core connectivity between us and what we were able to see in each other, that was there, and that's where the bonds were made, and that's why the mentorship could happen.
So did you approach people that you thought would be a good fit for you, or did it just happen naturally? Like how did you make it happen for yourself, or did it just happen naturally?
Uh, I I I tell people all the time I'm a little shy, but I'm not a shrinking violet, and I think they're two different things, right? So I'm not someone who is looking to necessarily be the center of attention in the life of the party, but I'm focused, and if I know I need something, I work hard to fill that void. And so that was a part of that recognition. How do I fill the void? How do I find those people? And I really very prescriptively started thinking about who would work, who could I seek out, who could I approach? And you just have to work up the courage and do it.
When you make the approach, and I'm diving a little deep here just because it's clear it's been such an important thing in your career, but when you made the approach, was it like how did you phrase it in such a way that people weren't immediately like, "Oh boy, here's somebody that wants me to get them a job?"
Well, and it's interesting. I think there's number one. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever gone to someone and said, "I want you to get me a job." Very rarely do, or anything. Very rarely, and I guess it's just inherently me, and maybe my background as a woman of color and some generational, um, just inherent generational, who I am. But I very rarely go and say, I need you to, or ask for help. And I think that's something in these last few years we all recognize we need to be better at. So that's something I tell people I need to be much better at. What I do more often is I say, I'd love to know how you handled X situation. So again, it goes back to being prescriptive. So I don't necessarily say, I need help doing, but in my brain, I know what I need to achieve, and I look for people who have done it. And I just merely, people love to talk about themselves. Look at me, I'm right now.
Well, it'd be really boring if you didn't. It'd be a really boring show.
People love to talk about themselves. So as opposed to me going and saying, I need help to achieve, I understand what my goal is, that end goal is. I find someone who's done it, or I know is part of achieving that. And I say, how do you do it? Talk to me about you and what you do. And trust me, floodgates open.
So 30 years in the industry. And did you ever imagine during that time that you would have your own agency? Is that something you aspired to have, or how did that happen?
Not one time. I I worked for the company I worked for. for over 30 years. So that company where Phil Duesenberry was the boss, BBDO, I was in the media group there. Eventually the media group spun off, but it still was a part of Omnicom. Oh, you've got the you got
You have the whole team.
the whole team. Yeah, and you remind me, I've got to change out. People change, people come and go, but that stays the same. And those are our clients, and that puts a big smile on my face because we work with those folks, and we still work with those folks, and that says something. That says something about who we are and what we do and how we deliver. So that piece right there makes me smile. It's pretty big.
But your own agency.
And so I worked there for 30 some years. I am from Cleveland. I'm someone who really enjoys benefits and a biweekly paycheck. I mean, I'm a good, solid Midwesterner to my core. But the folks I worked for and with at Omnicom said, we believe you should have your own agency because here at Omnicom, you have been a very solid entrepreneur. And you have found so many new and interesting ways for us to build revenue and build client relationships. And so maybe there's an opportunity for you to do that on your own. And I thought, okay, 30 years later, I'm a little
kicking me out of the nest.
I'm a little long in the tooth, but let's see what happens. And we launched January 1st, 2019, and there was a lot of learning for me. I was not an entrepreneur. I was very much a team player, team leader, but not an entrepreneur. But that first year we made it through, and I remember saying to my husband in and around New Year's, okay, I made it through 2019. I'm figuring out how to run a business. 2020, nonstop. Let's go. Here as we go into 2022, after all we've been throughout that journey, we're still here. I need to update the website, but we're still here.
We all got to update something. I actually have a couple of ads. Don't go anywhere. You can sit right here with me because I don't like to be by myself while I do it. We're sponsored by Castos, castos.com. If you want to have an audio podcast, they make it incredibly easy. Upload your audio files, send it out to all the places that podcasts are syndicated. So check that out, castos.com. If it wasn't easy, Chris wouldn't do it. That's how you know it's super easy. And if you would like a .online domain, you can have one for not even $1. It's 99 cents. Just go to cbrogan.me/online and use the code Chris in all caps. I don't know why it's all caps, but it is. So just don't forget. And if you want to have your own video show, you're going to have to get your own multicultural marketing expert, but do that. It's worth it. cbrogan.me/StreamYard. It makes it possible for us to bring these guests to you so we can bring you business success insights from unusual places. Okay, I did it. That's all the marketing I have in me right now. So
you did it well.
Right from the very beginning of your career, realizing how little representation there was in advertising and marketing, how did you successfully create campaigns that did reach all people in different communities? Like if you've got a bunch of cisgendered white guys looking over your shoulder while you do your job, how do you create successful campaigns for like Latina women or something?
Well, there's a word I use a lot, probably more than I should. It's maybe getting a little stale, and that's empathy. And if you're willing to be empathetic, you can be extraordinarily successful in marketing and advertising. If you are not willing to be empathetic, you likely will not. You will not certainly reach the levels of success that you could achieve. So I identify as a Black female. I have won awards for campaigns that are for non-Hispanic white males, Latinas, you name it. And that's because I like to think, and maybe also it's because I'm a Gemini, so there's 2 or 3 or 4 of me here. But I like to put myself literally in the shoes of that audience and understand them and know what they're thinking and know what they want. And as marketers, that feels like a simple ask. Shouldn't that be step one of everything we do? But many people don't. Many people just proceed kind of blindly, force-fitting their own thoughts and opinions and goals into a marketing conversation. And then they wonder why it doesn't succeed. Well, it didn't succeed because you were marketing to yourself and you're one person. You bought it and it was done. That's not a big sales trend.
No. That type of empathy, though, is it easier now or more difficult? Because I feel like in some ways we're more polarized as a society, but at the same time, we've got more data than ever, and it's easy to get to. So easier or harder to cultivate that type of empathy now?
So I'm going to go a little, I'm going to do a little pitchy right now, but you hit on something that I love to talk about. So there to me is this balance now, and it's 2022 for all intents and purposes, knock on wood. And we live in a world so rich with data, and we know so much about people. How can you not even fake the funk? Like, just pretend to be empathetic. We know so much. So my agency, I've trademarked a phrase. We don't say multicultural, we say microcultural, because we're able to really dig so deep and mine so deep into the minds of our consumers and our audience and our targets, using and leveraging data. But what we are always mindful of is to balance that with that empathy, with that inherent understanding, that qualitative layer on top of all that quantitative data and analytics. And that's, to me, what our secret sauce is. It's a team that looks and sounds like the audiences and the communities we want to reach and we want to deal with. We're able to empathetically and inherently, because we are of and from these communities, layer in what we know to be true. And then we surround that with that mind data, that micro cultural insight that we can bring to the table. And I think that's what makes really for a rich conversation when you're talking to these audiences.
Have to jump a little bit around because you've done some things that I just want to know about, like FedEx on Castaway. Tell me about that.
So
Like, could it have been UPS? Like, what's the scoop?
That's funny. So I want to say for the record, I am not the, Bob Zemeckis and everyone else would be very upset. I am not certainly the driving force. What happened was FedEx was a client, and all right, you're gonna laugh at me, but my dog is licking, and I should have put a cone on him. And I'm gonna throw this the next time he starts licking, because he's
Your
gonna
dog is
hurt himself.
licking. No, we
He's
love
nibbling,
dogs and kids. Oh, with licking themselves. You can
he's
go grab the
nibbling
dog.
his paw. So when
Oh,
you see me
no.
throw this, it's not dog abuse, by the way. He's the world's most spoiled person, but he's
Oh,
got to stop with the
no.
licking. He doesn't have a cone.
Feel free to pick the dog up if you need to. I mean,
So
is it like a Yorkie or is it like a new
no,
face?
it's a 90-pound boxer who is the world's most spoiled person, and he needs to stop chewing on his toes.
Okay.
Fred Smith is CEO at FedEx, and founder CEO, and wanted to be involved in the entertainment world. So much so, FedEx was the first film that launched his very prominent now and successful production company. So he's a production company himself. But we were the agency of record, and my job at that time was branded entertainment marketing, native content, even all those years ago. And so they came to us. They said, look, this is essentially what that is. FedEx is being integrated into this content. We want your support, because we don't have anyone at the time. No one was doing that. We don't have anyone who knows how to do it. And my boss and I, that's what we did for a living. So we got the chance of a lifetime to work on such an iconic film and understand how that worked and the nuances. And I like to think we did a good job. I think it came out okay.
I hear it's good. No, I liked it. I liked it. About diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry, I feel like we've heard more discussion about it over the last year and a half than probably at any other point in my marketing career, and yet not seen as much progress in terms of representation, especially at the top, but I mean like throughout. I feel like it hasn't budged a lot. What's the story there? What do people need to do differently?
I kind of give my age a little bit when I say I've done this now 30 plus years, and this is the second and a half, third cycle of this conversation. I have to admit, I thought perhaps this might be a cycle where there would be some movement, but I don't see it happening. I don't want to sound like I'm, bah humbug, but I look for actions, not words. And so what I can say is where I have impact and where I can make an effect and change, that is what I do. And if more people think like that and operate like that, we will begin to see that change. But right now, it's a lot of talking the talk, not walking the walk, and really talking the talk because you feel like you have to, not because you want to. And that's probably the saddest thing of it all.
Well, it's not even enough if companies say we want to recruit more diverse workforce, people from different backgrounds. Even if they do that, they're not necessarily making it possible for people from different backgrounds to succeed at their organization. They're just dropping them in.
Nope. I was with one of my mentors last night, and she and I coined a phrase in tech many moons ago. We would say recruitment is important, but retainment is even more. So recruitment, yes, opening up channels, finding pipelines, getting people in the door, but the retainment. I was the only chip in the cookie, and by all accords, I should have left long before the 30 years that I stayed, because I didn't have a lot of familiarity around me. And that's what people need. We're human, or I like to think we're human. Some of us may be, I don't know, robots or aliens, but let's go with 95% of us are human. And we look for that. And there's emotion that's involved. And we don't just want to go in and get a paycheck and suffer throughout the day. We want to feel like we're seen and heard. And that doesn't happen if you're alone, if you feel alone. And like no one there understands who you are and why you come from that place you come from. But again, I got lucky. I got very lucky, and I was surrounded by, and I found people that I could work with and attach myself to that did feel like family. And I created my own family, but many times that doesn't happen. And I talk to so many people who say, in advertising and marketing and other fields, who say, I was so excited for this job, and I told my mom, and my mom told all of her friends, and within 6 months I was gone. And it was just because I was miserable, and I couldn't stand one more person asking to touch my hair. I couldn't stand asking, one more person asking me, what should they be listening to in hip hop, because their kids listen to hip hop. I should make their rap playlist for them. Maybe I like country.
Right.
Maybe I like country. So there's a lot still to be done. It goes back to that magic word empathy that I use so often, and being willing to put yourself in someone else's shoes and look around and say, I just realized sitting at this table, one of these things is not the same, and that's not good. How can we fix it?
When I was originally, I was a lawyer. I'm not practicing now. I'm still a lawyer, but I wore a new suit to work, and one of the security guards asked if she could touch it. And I was like, no. And then later on, she asked if I wanted to be roommates, and I was like, again, also no, but thank you. So little weird things happen everywhere.
Yeah, that's a slightly different kind of weird and touch, but yes, I'm going to go with yes.
Totally agreed. So what do you do? Now you have, it was a little strange. And I love that she liked my suit. Like, it was a cool suit, but I was still like, she poured a big bucket of creep juice on it for me. I couldn't wear it after that.
Yeah. You got to ask before you proceed.
Totally. Well, now that you're at the helm of your own agency, what are you doing differently to retain the right people, not just recruit them?
Well, I mean, we're in the middle of the Great Resignation. So it's interesting that you asked that, because it's difficult. It's hard. We are a small and scrappy agency. I don't have the resources that the behemoth holding companies have. I don't have the financial resources. I don't have the opportunity to bring in a chef to make lunch for everyone every day. I can't underwrite a car and someone's lease. I cannot do that. And these are things that are happening, and they have to happen because people are saying, I don't want to work here. I don't want to do it. So what I can offer is decency. What I can offer is transparency. What I can offer is familiarity. And what I can offer is kindness. And I think people forget kindness is a part of a professional equation. Just because it's work doesn't mean you have to be an asshole.
Oh, you're so right. I started a new job at the end of August, and everyone's been really wonderful. My mom passed away unexpectedly less than 2 weeks ago, and my boss was like, go.
Yeah.
Everybody in the place was so amazing about it. And all I could think was, I've been at other jobs where people were like, well, what's the status of everything? Like, before you'd be allowed to leave, like after my dad had his stroke, years ago, my boss was like, well, let's look at everything and see, where it is. And I was like, are you kidding? No, you can pick up a phone. You can manage. Like, I organize my files alphabetically like everybody else. So,
Yeah, and I'm so sorry to hear that. No, we
thank you.
call ourselves a family, and that's what we are. We are a little scrappy, close-knit family, and we try to be there for each other. And it can be cyclical. There's not a lot of us, so we come and go. But at a core, we're there for each other, and that's what's key.
I'm interested to know a little more about your creative process. So when you're coming up with a campaign and you want to get into, especially now because there's as many brands that want to be relevant and continue to be relevant, that as there are people in the world, pretty much there's new ones, old ones, whatever. How do you kind of home in on the right approach to use for a specific community? Like, what does it look like? How do you inspire yourself?
So it's a lot of right brain, left brain for me. It goes back to being a Gemini. And I am someone who is very old school. I take a piece of paper and I draw a line down the middle every time. Every time for 30 years, I draw a line down the middle. And on one side, I will write needs. And on the other side, I will write wants. And so under needs, that tends to be all of the client requests that are formalized. I need to sell this many units. I need to reach this many people. The metrics, the measurements, the analytics, anything that is a firm and formal, this is a need and has to happen. And then on the other side, I put, so then what are the wants? What could I surround all of these needs with in a really engaging and creative way that's going to make someone stop and go, not just stop and go, oh, I want to learn more, but then the result, the KPIs will all be met. And so I start coming up with those ideas, and that's how I really do it. And so far, so good.
So far, so good. For the last 30 years, it's worked out okay. But we'll see how it goes. We've reached a point in the show where I recognize our person of the day.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
I feel it has to be Deanna because she's been making observations. She really wants to see your dog. She says, hoping creative freedom, flexibility are good too. Looking for a part-time digital media book launch person, hard to find. No doubt right now, good help is hard to find.
Yes.
I also want to see the dog. I'll have to follow you on Twitter or something for a photo later.
He is on my feed. He is absolutely on my feed. And if before we go, if I can get him to come over, I will snap a couple fingers and see if the cat's behind me. Can you see the cat? The cat? No, I'm doing there.
No. Only well, only if the dog wants to. I know that the dog's recovering from something, so let's not make it harder than it has to be.
He's being difficult.
Oh, and Deanna, don't forget that being person of the day entitles you to one apple. You just have to go and purchase it yourself, wash it really good, and then core it and put it into a tartlet or something. That would be my recommendation. So Marissa, we have one. It's an amazing prize, right? We have one question that we have asked everyone who's ever been on the show, including Sister Anne Flanagan from the Daughters of St. Paul, Sir Mix-a-Lot of Baby Got Back fame. I mean, literally everyone. What goes in your backpack for success? So the things are changing. You can only carry what you can fit in a backpack. You could choose something physical like beef jerky or something metaphorical like hope for the future. What do you put in the backpack, Marissa?
Well, I do have a special custom backpack for the dog, even though he's 90 pounds. I keep it in my car. God forbid something happened to the dog so that I can sling him in there and put him on my back. And he is my four-legged child. So he goes into his unique little backpack. He is how I move. It's interesting. Right now, so I'm balancing, we talk about the sandwich generation. So I'm watching the dog on one hand, and on the other hand, I'm very blessed and lucky to have my 99-and-a-half-year-old grandmother with me. That's and she's visiting us from the Midwest, and she'll be here through the holidays. And it is her spirit and her unwavering focus that I would love to bottle and take with me forever. This weekend, she was swimming laps in the pool. She had to get her laps in. Last night, we went to a wonderful, amazing women's function, and she had pearls for everyone. She's so accomplished, but 99 and a half, and she's still extraordinarily just focused and unwavered in just being resolute in who she is and offering to other people. So I would bottle all of that and take it with me.
That's amazing. Chris ends every show by talking about his grandmother. He tells a story that's almost always fake, usually. And we used to get people writing in to be like, wait, what happened? What happened to grandma? And we're like, it's not a real story, but it's because he would begin the story and then end it. And I think the one that was the most sensational is he talked about his grandmother's part-time job. Because like by day she worked in a factory, but by night, and that was a small town.